Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Bava Daf Nun Gimel. We're going to begin on the very last line on Nun Beis Mid Beis. So the quote "Nafal afan of Chulu" is going back on our Mishnah on Nun Beis Mid Aleph, and it says the following: let's say the animal falls face forward, and we said it's mikol hakriya. There are people that are actually in the pit that are doing construction, either making it wider or deepening it, and because of the banging of the tools, it alarmed the animal and it startled it and it fell into it. So since it fell face forward, the Mishnah says you're chayiv. Lacharov, if let's say for the same reason, because of these sounds of the kol hakriya, but it fell backwards, then we're going to be potter. So there's a difference between falling forward, animal falling face forward, as opposed to falling backwards. We'll have to understand why. So nafal afanav, says the Gemara, Omarav lafanav mamish, achar mamish. So his head first went into the bore, and therefore it died because of the hevel, because of the smell, the foul odor, or as I tend to understand it, because of the lack of oxygen, because the animal fell face forward and its face is stuck in this earth on the bottom of this pit, and therefore it basically can't breathe because of that air quality, and it can't move, and that's the reason why you're going to be chayav according to Rav. As we continue to Nun Gimel Amud Aleph, v'zeh v'zeh bibor. What does that mean? Says Rashi. V'yafilu hachi hashmiina masnis and the potter hoya v'loi mehavoa mace el mechavata. However, if the reason why the animal died was because of the hit, he holds that's karka oilam d'bnei Rabbim hizikasai, which is, again, as we saw before, that according to Rav, the only reason why you're going to be chayiv in a pit is dafka lefanav, because it's lahavalei v'chavatoi. The hit, the damage was because it just hit the ground. And if it hit the ground, so even though it's a deep pit, you're going to be potter for that. And therefore that's the reason why he says it doesn't have to be again directly. It has to be the animal falls face forward. When it comes to a pit, whether the animal even falls backwards, you're chayiv. So because Shmuel holds, and this is again the chiddush, that even if it's bein lachara, if it falls backwards, which means, how did it die? It didn't die because of the smell, because it was able to breathe, because it was on its back. But the problem is that it was so much damage that it caused it to die in that way. So therefore, this, as I was fishing to try to figure out some of these questions that weren't being asked on TB 11, because it was like a few almost no questions. So this is actually the case. It says, so yeah, it's totally on this machlokas Rav and Shmuel. Rav says there is no nafkamina. It doesn't make any difference. That he does say there's a distinction, that you are chayiv TB 11 when this animal falls forward, because he holds a havalai, but if it falls backwards, you're potter because the lula chavatai. Okay, as Shmuel says, no, you're going to be chayiv in either situation because he holds a havalai v'koshkin l'chavatai. Okay. Elahechidam l'acharav mikola kriya the potter. So the problem, this Mishnah sounds very clear like the sheet of Rav, but how do we understand Shmuel? Shmuel says that you're chayiv either way. So why does the Mishnah say if it falls backwards that you're potter? So kigoyin deniskal babor, it tripped into the pit. V'nafal lachori habor, chutz labor, it fell outside of the pit. In other words, it actually didn't go in. So what happens? V'nafal lachori habor, chutz labor. So because of that, that's the reason why you are going to be potter. If it fell backwards into the pit, then you would be chayiv according to him. But what ended up happening is that it didn't go fall all the way into the pit. But because of the damage, it landed on the ground. But in that situation, because they didn't actually land in the pit, you're going to be potter. Esvei. Bebor, when it comes to in the pit, ben lafana ben lacharav, chayiv, tiyufta de Rav. It sounds a lot like Shmuel. So Rav Chisda might have Rav. Now, you're right. Rav typically will say you're only going to be chayiv if the animal falls face forward. So why over here does it say chayiv even backwards? Because he'll agree, bebor b'reshusai, that this is only talking about an abor in the Reshus HaRabim. Here, we're talking about a bor in his Reshus. The chayiv mishum di armelei manavshach. Bahavala mace, if it died because of the smell and it couldn't breathe, haval didachu, it's yours. Bachavata mace, chavata didachu, it's your property. So therefore, I should not, in this situation, you're going to be chayiv because it's your property. So even though you can say, well, it's just karka, but it's your land. It was damage on your land. So therefore, that's the reason why you will be chayiv. So the only reason why Rav and Shmuel argues only because it's in the Reshus HaRabim. However, it was actually in this person's domain, so even the Chara of Rav will agree that you're going to be chayiv. Okay. So that's the idea, because he owns the ground, so he'll be chayiv even for chavato, even according to Rav. That is the chiddush over here. So Rav ba'omer hachmai skin, and here we're talking about, that's one answer. Mishapech, the ox flipped over. That's what it's referring to. The ox flipped over. The nafal a'apei, and it fell on its face. Mishapech v'nafal agabei, and then it flipped over and landed on its back. The havola ahanibe. So the havala, there was a smell in the front. So therefore, even though it says lacharav he's chayiv, but it's really lahavaloi. It was maybe not the chavatoi. Okay, fine. So that maybe that's the explanation. So it's not a kasha on Rav who says lahaval lachavatoi, because it actually did fall forward, but then it just rolled over. Rav Yosef Amar Hachabaniski bor b'shor eskinan. Here we're talking about the damage of a pit with a shore. That's what we're referring to. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Shahabor nichnas l'chatzer bal habayis shel b'rshus. An ox went into someone else's property without permission. V'lo hifker lo reshus v'lo boyroi. Now the owner, it was the owner's property. He was not mafker his property, and he was also not mafker the boar. V'nafal bor, the animal fell into a pit. V'hivish es meimov. So what happened? So the ox ruined the water. So what are we talking about? Asking in my nihu shehivish es meimov, that the animal, the ox, ruined the water. That in this situation, either way, the owner of the ox is going to be a chayiv. So basically, what happens is actually the ox ruined the water in the pit. So the Baal HaShor is chayiv. Not we're talking about the din of the boar, and is the Baal HaBor chayiv for damaging the ox. No, the ox fell into this pit, which this pit was owned by a person, and it was in this person's property. This animal had no right being on this person's private property, and it fell into a pit, and it caused damage in the water. So we're not going to say that, okay, fine, something happened to the ox. The ox had no business being there. So therefore, if the animal got injured, the Baal HaBor should not be chayiv, because he was trespassing. This animal was trespassing. And not only that, but the ox caused damage because it ruined all the water. It spoiled all this drinking water. So therefore, actually, in that situation, we don't care how it fell. In either way, it's going to be chayiv. Mainly, the Baal HaShor is going to be chayiv. Tani Rav Chananya. So Rav Chananya says, Lesuil Rav. He wants to support Rav that it's dafk if the animal fell forward because he holds a haval v'chavatay. So v'nafal ad sheyipoil. So it says the pasuk v'nafal. It means ad sheyipol derech nefil. So we said before, it falls forward. Mekan amr nafal afanim mikol hakriya chayav lachar mikol hakriya pater, which is exactly what Rav says, which is what our Mishnah said, that if it falls forward, you're chayav. If it falls backwards, you're pater. V'zeh bor, and both these cases are referring to the boar, namely the owner of the boar. Should he be chayav? And therefore, it's just like the shita of Rav. Okay. So the Gemara tries to understand this better. So Omer Mar, Nafal Afan Mikol Hachriya Chayiv. So we're saying that the Baal Habor is Chayiv if this ox fell face forward. Why should the owner of the ox, the owner of the pit, be Chayiv? Nema, let the owner say, Kaira Garmle, it was the digger that caused it, not me, not the owner. The person who was sitting in this pit digging, he's the one that caused the problems because he was banging and banging. It wasn't me that did it. So why should I be chayiv? So Amar Rav Shimi Barashi Hamani Rav Nasanhi. The Amar Baal Habor has zeka ka'avid. The Baal Habor actually did an element of damage, says Rashi Kleimer. But Taich Shaloi, since it was in his pit, Nimsa Hanezik, that's where the damage was found. The Kol Hechad actually Shlomi Mekayra, the Kol Grama Baalmahu, Ishtalmine, the Baal Habor. So Rav Nasan, as we've seen in other places, where you're not able to collect from one, if there's two parties that did damage, let's say an ox that pushes another ox into a pit, so you have the Baal Hashor is chayiv, and the Baal Habor is chayiv. They both did something wrong to cause the damage of this animal. So the question is, if you can't collect completely from one, can you go to the other person? So Rav Nasan says yes, that in the event where you cannot completely collect from one, you can go to the other. And therefore, because the person who is banging, even though he really is the one who's responsible, but banging is a grumma. And grumma and azikin we know is potter. Even though you're not supposed to do it, cause damage, but it's only a grumma, it's only an indirect manner. And therefore, since you can't collect from him, so we're going to go after you now, the Baal Habor. So that's Rav Nasan. The Yom Baal Habor has zeka ka'avid. He did damage. You can't collect from one guy, you collect from another. Where do we see this? As we saw before, the Sanya. Actually, Rashi said this before also. Shor shedachav eschavera labor. Baal hashor chayim. So, if you have an ox that pushed another ox into a pit, so therefore the pit did the damage, but the ox caused the animal to fall into the pit. So the Baal Hashor Chayim, because the Baal Hashor is the one that pushed the animal, so you have to pay those damages. Baal Habor Potter, and the owner of the pit doesn't have to pay anything. Rav Nasan says 1 second. It depends. Baal Hashor Mishal Mechsa, Baal Habor Mishal Mechsa. Split it 50-50. Vasanya, but we learn elsewhere the Rav Nasan Amar Baal Habor Mishal Gimel Chalakim Baal Hashor Raviyam, that the owner of the ox actually pays 3/4, and the Baal Hashor pays 1/4. So it depends. If we're dealing with let's do it. The muad is easy. So when it comes to a muad, since you're chayav to pay nezek shalim, so we say that each one has to pay chati nezek, 50 and 50. However, when it comes to a tam, so in that situation, the Baal Hashor only pays 1/4. Why? Because he's like a shutuf. So since he would have only paid chati nezek anyway, total, so therefore, but since he's a partner in crime, so therefore he only has to pay half of the half or 1/4. And since he pays 1/4, so then the Baal Habor has to pay the rest. The Baal Habor has to pay the other 3/4. Okay, so that's the explanation. And this may just be question 13 straight up. So I'd be surprised, but that's what it is. Short tam umuad shedachav escheiru labor ketzad mischalkim Baal Hashor Baal Habor b'tashum l'Rabbanan Rav Nasan. Okay, so Rav Nasan we just did. So Rav Nasan, if it's referring to a tam, so the Baal Hashor does 1/4 and the Baal Habor does 3/4. However, that wants to do by a muad also, or a muad. According to Rav Nasan, when it comes to a muad, each one pays half. Okay. Now, according to the Rabbanan, when it comes to a muad, the Rabbanan hold that the Baal Habor is completely potter, and the Baal Hashor has to pay full damages. As again, according to Rav Nasan, you split it. Now, the Rabbanan hold when it comes to a tam that the Rabbanan say that the Baal Habor is potter. The Baal Habor is always potter, and the Baal Hashor pays chati nezek. Okay, so that's the difference. So again, when it comes to a tam, the Rabbanan holds that the Baal Habor is always potter, tam or muad, according to Rabbanan, and therefore, if it's a tam, so the Baal Hashor pays his chati nezek, and the Baal Hashor by muad pays nezek shalom. He pays the whole thing. Now, according to Rav Nasan, he says no, it's not true. The Baal Habor does share some responsibility, and therefore, Since the Baal Hashor by a Tom has to pay a quarter, so the Baal Bor pays the rest, 3/4. When it comes to a Baal Hashor, only pays half, the Baal Bor has to pay the other half. Okay. So too over here, even though you can say the bang and the banging, so nonetheless, even though he's potter, but still the Baal Bor is going to have to pay. But Tom, Mike Suver, how do we understand this din of a Tom? Ik Suver, Hai Kuli, Hazek Ovid, Vahai Kuli, Hazek Ovid. Each one did the whole thing, full damage. Hai Mishal Palga, Hai Mishal Palga. So how do we, what, each one should pay half. The Ik Suver, Hai Palga, Hazek Ovid, Vahai Palga, Hazek Ovid. Each one only did half damages. So Baal Habor, Mishal Palga, Baal Hashor, Revia. So the Baal Bor should pay half. And the Baal Hashor, because it's a Tom, only pays a quarter. Right? V'idach riba mafsid, and he loses out on the other quarter. So a bor is always nezik shalom. So the half of it is a half, and the shor tam is a half of a half, which is a quarter. So Amarava Rabbi Nassan dainahu v'nachas umka dedina. Rabbi Nassan, let's not forget, he's a dayan, and he's able to go into the depths of din. Lamek savar haikuli hazeko avod haikuli hazeko avod. He really holds that both the Baal Habor and the Baal Hashor both did the full damages. Each one should pay half. Baal Hashor, Baal Habor, because the Baal Hashor can say, Shutfusa mayahanyali. The shutvis, what am I gaining from you? In other words, I would have had to pay Chatzinezik anyway for a Tom. This is what the Baal Hashor could say. Because it's a Tom, and you have to pay Chatzinezik anyway. So you being my partner in crime doesn't help me unless it's split. We split the half, namely 1/4 each. And therefore, since I only have to now pay a quarter, so then you have to pay the other 3/4. Each one is half. So the Baal Bor should only pay half. The Baal Habor should pay half, and the Baal Hashor, I agree, only pays a quarter. Because the Baal Hashor, who's paying the quarter, could say, my ox, the Baal Hashor, the owner of the one who did that was damaged, can say, I found my animal in your pit. At katalte, you killed my ox. Madi islay lashtumi mehech mishtalma mishtalma. Madalesli lashtulumi mehayech mishtalma mimech. So whatever I'm able to get from him, I'm able to get from him. Whatever he's not able to give me, you should give me the rest, because my ox was found dead in your pit. Okay. Good. Weiter. Omarabba, haniach even al piabor. Let's say a person put a stone on the top of a pit, which protected it and covered it. Uba shore, and the ox came, v'niskelba, and it tripped over the rock, v'nafal babor, and it fell into the pit because it tripped over this rock. So bano machlokas Rav Nassim Rabbanan. So it's the same machlokas Rav Nassim Rabbanan, that this rock is just comparable to the shore that pushed the shore into the pit. It's like the owner of the rock, or the one who put the rock there, is also going to be chayav in the same way. Subshita. Why would you think it's any different? So Ma'adatema Hasamudi Amar Baal Habor La Baal Hashor, the Baal Bor could say to the owner of the ox, Ilav Bira Didi, if it wasn't for my pit, Torah Didach Havikatale, your ox would have been killed. Baal Evan La Baal Bor, but the person who owns the stone could say, Ilav Bira Didach, if it wasn't for your pit, Avne Didi may have avde. What did it do? He havi miskelba, havi nafal v'koi. It would have just tripped and fallen on the ground. And therefore you would think that the person who owned the rock shouldn't be chayiv. The Baal Hashor is doing a lot, the animal is doing a lot of damage to the other animal. But this the rock, it would have just fallen on the ground. It went out and fall into a pit. So Kamash Wandi Yamalei, Ilav Evan, if it wasn't for your rock, lo havi nafal bira. It would never have fallen into the pit. So it's kind of almost like Gemara Psachim is the mouse the ganav, or is the hole the ganav, if you're Hamev and Yavin. So it's the same idea, is that who's really responsible, right? The owner of the pit can say, this animal would never fall into my pit if your rock wasn't there. And the owner of the rock can say, even if it tripped over a rock, if there was no pit, it wouldn't have gotten severely injured. And therefore, they're both going to be responsible to some degree, according to the Shita Rav Nosson. Again, that's the Machlokas. Itmar. So we learn as follows on Nun Gimel Amud Beis. Shor v'shor psuli hamikdashim shenakhu. So let's say you have an ox together with an ox of psuli hamikdashim shenakhu, and they gored. So let's look at the parentheses. My nihu shor b'chor delul parklei. We're talking about an ox, a firstborn ox with a blemish, with a mum, and it was not yet redeemed. Abaye Omer Misham Chatzi Nezek. So Abaye says you should pay, just like Rav Nosson, half damages. Why? Says Rashi, Loy Karina Be Shori Ehu, the Mishulchan Gavoa Kazachu. We don't say that it's considered to be Shori Ehu, it's like your shore, because it's, even though you can eat it, it comes from Shulchan Gavoya. Skipping a couple lines in Rashi, Ashmina de Avlu B'chor Bal Mum. Even though when it comes to a Bal Mum, Potter, you're still going to be Potter. Hoyel V'lo Nifta, because it wasn't yet redeemed. Of a Psul Mikdashim, when we're dealing with Psul Mikdashim Shenifta, which were redeemed, Chayv L'Shalim, Im Nagchu D'Shori Ehu Krin Bey. Because in that situation, if you have Psul Mikdashim which were redeemed, then it does fall into the category of Shori Ehu. So that's Abaye, who says you pay Chatzi Nezek like the Shita Rav Nosson. So the shor Psul Mikdashim doesn't pay anything, but the other owner of the ox that did damage is chayiv to pay Chatzi Nezek. Ravina Omer Misham Ravina Nezek, he pays only a quarter. So hava b'tam, and we're talking about a tam. Hakrabana hava Rav Nosson. Again, you only have to pay a quarter, because if at the most you have to be Chatzi Nezek, but since you're partners, you only have to pay half. So v'hai Rav Nosson. So iboy seima hava hakarabanan. Really, they're both like the Rabbanan. The statement of Ravina that you pay a quarter is batam, because again you split, because they're partners. Instead of paying Chatzi Nezek, since it's a partner, you pay half, which is a quarter. Haba Muid, which is Abaye, who says you pay Chatzi Nezek, because you have to pay full damages, but since you're a partner, you only pay half. Actually, it's not half and a quarter, but rather half and everything. Kuli Nezek, Havaha Bamuid, Hakrabanan of Hakrab Nosson. So one's like the Rabbanan, and therefore you pay full damage. The one's like Rav Nosson, that since you can't collect from the Hektish, actually Rav Nosson, since you can't collect from the Hektish, you pay everything. However, according to the Rabbanan, so you only have to pay the half. So again, we make a distinction. We either pay full or half, whether it's a muad or a tam. If it's a muad, then you have to pay the full thing. And tam, you only pay Chatzi Nezek. Omerava. Shor of Adam shidach v'ylabar. Let's say you have an ox and a person that collectively, as a partnership, pushed into a pit. If I'm saying this correctly. Good Rashi. Yeah, shor v'adam shedachvu davar echad labor. V'nimsu shloshten shutfin b'nezek hashor v'habor v'adam. So the shor, the bor, and the adam, all three of them did damage. The two people, the person and the shor, pushing something, and the pit. So in nizakin, when it comes to damages, kun chayavin. They're all chayav. Says Rashi, going im dachvu sham adam, v'huzik. There was damages, mishalmin bin kulin. You have to pay among the three all the damages. Pchas dam of the kulon chayavin beniski adam. The pchas dam of the fact that the value went down in value, your chayavim niski adam. The ha de kaimelon legabi bor shor v'lo adam bekatol kaimelon. When it says the din of a shore that pushes and not a person that pushes, that is only if the animal dies. not when it comes to damages. So it's interesting. The whole din of shor v'lo adam is only when it comes to damages. It's not when it comes to shor v'lo adam is if the animal is killed. However, not if there's damages. Therefore, when it comes to damages, everyone is chayiv. When it comes to the arba devarim, other than nezek, the person who pushed is chayiv, but the ox in the pit are going to be pater. As Rashi says, that we held, ish ba'mitai v'lo shor ba'mitai. V'chein b'nei vlados anashim ksiv gabi vlados v'lo shvarim. So only the man will have to pay for the arba devarim, and also the Dmei Vlados. For shor bor pater, as we said. When in kaifer, if let's say they pushed an animal, got killed, or a person rather, got killed, Ushloshim Shel Evan, they pushed a person, shor chayiv, adam ubor paturin. So in that situation, the shor that killed, you're going to be chayiv, kaifer, if the person died. However, adam ubor is pater, says Rashi, adam daha bar katolahu, because the person is a murderer, and a murderer, there's a din kamon b'ramina. So therefore, the reason why he doesn't have to pay anything is not a good thing. He's pater from kaifer is because he's going to be killed. He's going to be sentenced to death. And the bor, Rashi says, shor v'lo adam. It's only the din of paying kaifer is dafka if it's an ox that kills, but not a person, not or v'lo adam, or not a. Fine. Okay, so that's the reason why Adam Ubor is Paturin. Well, in Kalim that broke, Vishor Psul Mikdashim, Adam Vishor Chayavin Ubor Potter. Because as we said, that when it comes to a pit, we say Prat Kalim. So my time, what is the reason for all this? And the dead carcass will belong to you. So this excludes when it comes to Psul Mikdashim, because we make this drasha, which we say all the time, and Rashi says it too, she'ein poidin es hakadshim lachin l'klavim. Oh yeah, it does say it. Tizbach v'logiza bas v'lochol v'yachalta v'lochol. So even though when it comes to Psul Mikdashim, the din is that you are able to do some things with it, but you're not allowed to feed it to your animals. Even even though they were redeemed, but Psul Mikdashim were redeemed, you cannot give over to your animals, so it doesn't belong to you. So therefore, because of that, when it comes to Psul Mikdashim, the din is for Kalim, V'shor Psul Mikdashim, shor is chayav, but bor, adam of shor is chayavin. However, the bor is potter. Okay, because when the pasuk says v'hamesi alo, that falls into the pit, that's only something that you could actually keep. But since you cannot give it to your dogs, so therefore, if it's Psul Mikdashim, so then you're going to be potter babor. Okay, let's stop for a second, because there's a lot here to unpack. Let's look at question 14. Shor v'adam shedach v'adam labor v'huzik. So this is the case. You have like three damagers. An ox, a person that pushed something in, or here it says, you pushed a person into a pit and it damaged. Which is arba devarim. Rak hashor chayiv. A shor is only chayiv if it kills, like kaifer, right? Indian kaifer, which it says damage, doesn't say killed. Indian kaifer shloshim shel eved rak hashor chayiv, because this person will be chayiv misa of kemon barabina. Okay, so remember, you're trying to tell me the pshitli l'rava, that this whole matter is a simple regarding to Rava. V'hami boy l'Rava, yes the kasha. The boy Rava shor Psul Mikdashim shnaf labor. If you have a shor Psul Mikdashim that was redeemed, that fell into a pit, mahu, what's the din? Is the bal habor chayiv? Hi, v'hamesi elo b'misha hemis shaloi yatsa zeshein hamesh shalo. It's not yours because again you can't use it for so many other things. Odilma, and therefore your pot, the bal habor's potter. Odilma v'hamesi elo will bal metabam nevel hudasa. It just means, with regard to the din as we saw at the very beginning of this Masechta, that the nizik is mechuyev to be matapel menavel, says Rashi. The mesiel will nizik, that the nizik has to be matapel in the veil. That's all it's come to tell you, but it's not telling you anything about the din of Psul Mikdashim. So basta boy hadar pashta. He answered the question himself. El balim metapla medavela. Boston boy hada pashta. El balim metapla medavela minole. So apparently the simple answer, which doesn't sound so simple, is that no, you are pater babor. So then how do we know, Taka, if it's not learned out from this pasuk, that the nizik has to be matapa nevela? Nafkali v'hamesia lo deshor. My chazis the v'hamesia lo deshor mafkslei labala matapa nevela. The mesia lo debor mafkslei lamisha hemeshaloi epachana. Say the other way around. So mistabra pater gabi bor hoyel pater boyasa kalim, because when it comes to a bor, psul mitash is pater because there's also kalim are also pater. Adarab, pater gabi shor shekain pater bo chatzi nezik. So kuli nezik mias lo ashkechan, that you're totally saying you're totally pater, that we do not find except by a bor regarding kalim. So since we are makel by a bor, we must learn the kula of psul mikdashim is by a bor and not by a shor. Okay, we're going to stop there. And that was not the easiest piece, but I think we got through it pretty well. And let's see, we did question 14. And let's see, maybe we have another question here. T11. Mat study a savik b'shor psul mikdashim shnafel bor ibal habor chayev. Okay, so I got this half right. So do we say v'amesiel loy? Let's see how he writes it. Yeah, is v'amesiel lo b'misha hamish shalo? Odarshinale labalim metaplin b'nevela adkan.